Hey, what's up guys? Again, Dragon here, and I'm welcoming you all to my next episode on my Payday 2 Armory. Do you miss me? In today's episode, we're gonna cover up the Russian Nagant sniper rifle. Or just simply just rifle if you just don't have a scope. The weapon is of course available by default in the Crime Wave edition, but in order to access it on PC, you must either get the Legacy Collection, or if you want to buy it separately to just get this weapon, you have to buy the Gauge Historical Weapon Pack. The Nagant rifle, or goes by many names, the Free-Lined Rifle, M1891, or probably the most well-known name to the West, including me, the Mosin-Nagant. And of course, is of course held in Russia, and it was also a former Soviet Union as well. The weapon has been probably the oldest service rifle in history. Definitely one of the most recognizable bolt action of the time, as it was actually designed and in service in 1891, and it's still been used today. It has been through many of the wars, of course, like the wars like the Russo-Japanese War, both World Wars, Korean War, Vietnam War, the Cold War, and of course the Russia-Ukraine War, and that's happening today. The weapon actually fires from of course, a similar cartridge that's still being used by the Russians and other firearms today, the 7.62 by 54mm R, or which is translated to Russian. I thought it was rim, but I don't know where they got the rim from. Now, in terms of how many numbered they're built, there's about 37 million has been made or built, which is quite insane. But remember, back then, Russia in World War II, or during that timeline, the guns were pretty cheap, and in terms of making them, they were pretty simple enough. So that's quite a lot of rifles to have. And of course, the designers is surprising. There's two people who actually made this weapon. One is Captain Sergei Mosin, and the other, Emily Nagant. I probably butchered the name Nagant or Nagant, but I've always known it as the Mosin-Nagant. But yeah, two people actually made this weapon, which is actually pretty interesting. And you could tell where the Mosin-Nagant name comes from. Alright, let's actually now take a look a little bit more history with the weapon I have. Mainly I've been known about the Mosin-Nagant in World War II. And especially this was the standard issue rifle for the Russian army in both world wars. In World War II, they have the 1891 30 or 31 variants, which is mainly built for the World War II criteria. And this particular model in game is the Mosin-Nagant M1907 carbine. Of course, with the short barrel, you get the M38 carbine, while the long barrel, you get the M91/30. So quite interesting choices. And a little bit more history about the weapon in terms. Since in World War II, most armies, like the US, adopted the M1 Garand as their first ever service semi-auto rifle. The Russians had their own semi-auto as well. They have the SVT-38s and SVT-40s. However, they have a little problem trying to mass production of these rifles, and that's because Operation Barbarossa. Pretty much, it was Germany's invasion of Russia, and they basically captured a lot of the Russian weapons factories in terms of making it. So, and a lot of these factories held the semi-auto rifles, and of course, since the German had captured them, of course they reformed them. One of them being the Gewehr 43, but of course that story is probably just for another day. We're talking about the Mosin-Nagant, and this is where it comes in. Since the many loss of the SVTs fall into the Germans' hands, their only rifle option is the Mosin-Nagant, so they had to stick to the bolt action for most time. Well, there's still few use of them of the SVTs. You don't see it as much as pictured in in movies or like clips. And that's how the weapon came to be, and plus it's still been used still today, which is still surprisingly. Alright, enough with a little bit of history. Now let's actually look more into the model of the gun and more of its features. Of course, as we look close to the barrel, we see, of course, we have the front post hooded sight on top of the barrel. And underneath here is, of course, your little cleaning rod that you can, of course, clean your barrel. And due to the size of it, you can also fit a fixed bayonet pretty much right and close to the muzzle. And now we have some, of course, I did take off the scope because I want to view it in its like almost authentic as possible. And then, of course, we have our range adjustments on the trunnion side. It's really hard to tell by the looks of it because it's all blurry and it's not really the best look. And if I can get... Okay, so I'm looking at the side like from the top and work my way down to the bottom next to the V-notch side of the rear. So you have 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, 60, 65, 70, 75, 80, and 85. So I presume that's pretty much the adjustment of the range. I'm not really sure how that really able to adjust in those meters. And we got a little bit more writing on here. It's probably in Russian though, so... But I could tell by this model is the 1890. And it could be the serial number as well on the rifle. And then we have, of course, the feeding system. Of course, you're able to take out the magazine from the bottom to able to clean it. And of course, you reload it with the stripper clips. This Nagant has a straight bolt action. Straight bolt. And you may see some of the models have a curved bolt for their PU scope because they don't want the bolt gets in the way of the scope. Of course, you reload it and you feed it to the chamber and then you recock it back. But here's the thing though. When you try to reload the Mosin-Nagant with its own stripper clips, unlike most bolt-action rifles, the Nagant stripper clips, the moment that, of course, you try to push the bolt forward while you have that stripper clip into the feeding, on top of the feed chamber, the bolt can't move that clip out of the way. Unlike most rifles, like you may see people reloading the Mauser 98, where they can able to put all the bullets inside the gun and can able to push the bolt forward and the clip can able to eject it out itself. With a Nagant, you can't do that. You had to manually pick up this clip, toss it away, and reload the chamber, which can cost you a bit of few seconds. I have no idea what's the design purpose that the Russians have in mind. And we also have a serial number on the bolt, which looks like, I don't know if these are the exact same model or the same numbers. If they are, they're basically, that's part of this rifle. And that's pretty much mostly about it. And of course, this little round thing at the back, this usually you either push it in or push it out to take out the bolt assembly. And there's actually two pieces of the bolt rather than one. So remember, this is a very old rifle at this time, and people got used to the concept of the bolt action. Alright, that's quite enough of the story. Let's actually look over what you can put on this bad boy. Of course, like I mentioned with the variant names, you get a short barrel, which definitely looks like more of a carbine now. A long barrel, which pretty much is the standard issue rifle for the Soviets in the Second World War. And finally enough, you can add a suppressor. Now, I didn't really read much more if you can put a suppressor in the gun, but I do know the wrapping of the cloth wrapping out the barrel is definitely accurate to help, snipers concealed. Oh, fun fact. They actually have female snipers in the Russian army. So that's actually quite interesting. And of course, we have the Nagant bayonet. And funny enough, this attachment, or at least this section, is exclusive to the Mosin-Nagant because no other weapon has the bayonet attachment. And you can see the bayonet fits right on the end of the muzzle of the rifle. And of course, you lose 2 concealment, but of course you increase your melee damage and knockdown while using weapon butt. So if you're not using a weapon butt, this attachment is completely, useless. Though I love it for its cool effect, and it makes me look like a 20th century soldier fighting in the 21st century heist. Of course, you can put any of the boosts you want. I forgot to go over the stats of these attachments. So the short barrel gives you more concealment, -4 accuracy, while the long barrel gives you +8 stability, but -2 concealment. And the silenced barrel, reduces damage, accuracy, concealment, and threat, but you also gain a little bit of stability. Now, of course, you can put in concealment, stability, accuracy, and team boost, and of course the total ammo boost as well. Kind of funny though, bear in mind you say there's a +1 with the total of ammo I can increase, even though I have fully loaded, so bear in mind. So instead of 31, since I'm fully loaded, if I have 12 ammo, I get 33, which instead of saying 32. If I did not have fully loaded, I would have actually 26 rounds. But thanks to the fully loaded affecting the ammo boost, you can get an extra bullet. Now you can have gadget of your choice, which is kinda weird to see on a rifle like this. But of course, when you put on the gadget, they probably just place a pigtail rail on the side. They stick it on, maybe slap it with some super glue, and able to put attachments on, which is kind of weird, but hey, it works. Of course, you could put on any sight you want. Of course, by default, you have just the normal scope, and that's why I took it off, because that's not really its actual scope. You see, the PU scope actually locates a bit further back on the rifle, basically sitting on top of the feeding chamber. And what I said before about the bolt don't want it blocking the scope, um, they would have to make the bolt curve rather than straight. But now, since the scope is basically set on top of the rear sight, you don't have to worry about trying to curve the bolt for it to operate with the scope. And I have to say, this is an ugly ass scope on the Mosin. It's just awful. And you could definitely tell the pigtail rail is a little different. Like, it doesn't even have pigtail rails. It's just a piece of metal that they can able to put on the scope and basically on it and attach it to a rifle. And it does that to every other object you have in the game. Which, it does look a little bit out of place, but hey, it's Payday 2. What you expect? It just feels a little bit weird. But that's why I picked the iron sight, because I actually enjoy the iron sights, and I find to be very sexy. And last but not least, we have the stock choice, and we have the discrete stock, which basically turn your Nagant to black. Looks pretty interesting, especially if you want to try to add for some concealment, which you do. You get more concealment, but it costs of stability, but I'm pretty sure stability is no big deal on it because it's a bolt action. Every time you rechamber the next round before you fire the next round, the weapon already recenters your speed. But that's probably due to having high kick when you take the first shot. But yeah, that's gotta be about it with the Nagant. And I do have a fully decked out one, if I can find it, that is. It's been a while since I played Payday 2. It's been like 4 months. And here's my decked out Nagant, which... yeah, it looks probably... the only thing that looks out of place is the freaking gadget. But other than that, still look a pretty dope design. But anyway, that's it for the talk about the Nagant. Let's see this bad boy in action. Alright, here we are at the firing range. And I do gotta be apologize just in advance for my little bit of a sluggish when it comes to aiming and, you know, movement, because like I said, I hadn't played this game or even on PC for quite a few months now. But here's the Mosin-Nagant. And of course we can see when we aim down the sight, you can see it may look pretty blurry to begin with. And normally you're probably asking yourself, how can you even aim with that, or how accurate you can be with it? Well, I do know for one thing is I always look through, and it's thanks to this hooded front post sight. And that's what I love about the hooded iron sights, as opposed to chop it off the hood and leave it as a front post. Makes it very difficult to acquire my target because the rear sight can be a little bit in the way. But I do think it is pretty good. It may have a little bit of idle sway, but let's reload this bad boy and get to some shooting. Now you could definitely, now what you saw before was the bolt basically push forward with that stripper clip, which that's definitely not the right amount of the stripper clip model. It's actually a lot more black and a little bit bulkier, and plus there's no way for the bolt to actually able to eject that clip out of the gun. You had to do it by hands. But anyways, let's get to some shooting. I mean, pretty no stranger. It's pretty accurate, pretty straight. Now I want to see how very accurate you are with the iron sights in a much further, much longer range. So I'll be aiming at this little door. And of course, just like I said, bear in mind every time you fire your weapon, and before you're ready for for your next shot, the weapon recenter speed is set for you. Well, I did try to fire as fast as I go each time, and well, we have like 3 groupings. One of the 2 bullets must have hit in one in the other area, so it's not very much 100% accurate when you, of course, shoot it every time. And well, I don't have the scope attached, but I just like the iron sights way more than having a sniper scope. And plus, nice little trivia, this was the first sniper rifle you can apply iron sights to, which is pretty awesome. And you see the bullets hitting the floor and then just disappear. Now I'm gonna do attack reload, and you can see I only fire 3 shots, and somehow I fit additional 5 more. So you think I would have 7 rounds this time? Well, let's see. Going for the 5th one. Now what happens next? Would I able to shoot 2 more rounds, or would I have to reload? Take your pick. I'll give you a few seconds. Alright, the answer is you just load more. So those extra 2 shots you have, they're completely gone. So a little more shenanigan, shoot 1 bullet, reload, fit 5 more inside, so I should have 9, except it's still 5. So even the best, weapon emulator at the time did not add this much detail to it. Well, that's probably due to the engine, so I'm not gonna put much blame onto it. I blame the engine and not the people. But yep, that's the regular Mosin-Nagant. Now I'm gonna show you my fully decked out, which probably makes no difference, but I'll show you guys anyway. Be back in a second. Well, here it is, my fully decked out Mosin-Nagant. And to make sure I have it equipped my weapon butt, yep, you do something like this instead of like smack with the stock. You just try and do like a slash downwards. Now it's not really a most effective way of melee, but at least they give you the option. And of course, I have the LED combo on there. And of course, when you aim down with the iron sight with this gadget, it does get in the way of this bulkiness. So if you're trying to, switch targets when you shoot an enemy, let's say there's 2 snipers. You shot the first one, but it gets in the way with your scope. Which at least it sits at least at the bottom instead of to the top. And the dot sight is definitely a little bit more like a little bit misaligned, whereas actually being covered by the right side of the rear sight rather than just looking through the front posts of the tip. Okay, surprisingly, it didn't go through the same hole. Alright, I'm gonna try to fire as fast as I go. But now I have the LD combo, that means I get a little bit more stability, and plus, I have the long barrel on the gun, so that means I should have maximum accuracy regardless where my shots go. Okay, even though it's like a fully decked out gun, it had better, had a worse results than the regular version. But that doesn't mean it's quite bad, because after all, these snipers are very accurate at long range. Even with the iron sights, I will still prefer the iron sights over the sniper scope in most situations, because if you aim down the scope, you get a lot of idle sway, and there's no way for you to study it or hold your breath during that procedure. With the iron sights, yeah, you get a little idle sway, but at least your front post can still be very accurate. But yeah, that's gotta be it about the Mosin-Nagant. And now for my final conclusion. I'll see you back in the lobby. Overall, the Mosin-Nagant is definitely an interesting weapon. It was so unique of its kind to be very high concealable before the Desert Tech sniper rifle came in, and it was very unique to come with a bayonet, and also to able to use the iron sights the first time of its class. And this might be a little bit of a bias, but this is my favorite sniper rifle in Payday 2. I know there's like other sniper rifles out there in terms of bolt action. A lot of people they may like the R98 or the R700 or some of the lever action rifles. But the Nagant holds a place in my heart because I just enjoyed the look of the gun. I love the way the sounds when you're rechambering the next round. I love the firing sound. Everything about it just feels so I don't know what to say. There's just so many words come to my mind. I think of authentic. And I really wish there was more authentic of having the PU scope by default and have the straight bolt to a curve bolt. But of course, that's asking too much. But overall, I do think it's one of the more fun sniper rifles to have, and it's definitely one of my favorites. Heck, it also is pretty good for concealment as well. It's still pretty good for concealment, although you won't get much practical with it compared to the Desert Tech. But I can assure you, at least you have more fun with this weapon, and plus you can use it in close quarters thanks to the use of the iron sight. And plus, it is one of a banger weapon to have, and it's also one of my favorite weapons to use on Death Sentence 1 down difficulty. Just because you can able to one-shot headshot many of the units, including shields, and of course if you get rocking with crits, whether it be with low blow or unseen strike with a certain setup, it's definitely a monstrous of a weapon, and I could probably tell it's probably even more monstrous if you have grace. But yeah, that's gotta be it on the Mosin-Nagant. And I want to say thank you for watching, everyone. Until next time, farewell, and have a wonderful day, everyone.